we're talking about love at the end of the day,
Yes.
which would be something that is exciting, something that you're looking forward to, yet we're ending up frustrated and tired and probably not wanting to do it anymore.
When we think about online dating, I think now everyone thinks about, there's the smartphone and using apps to hopefully find the love of their life. But the concept of using technology for dating actually started in the 1960s. Interesting, right?
Interesting,
Yes,
okay.
and by a few students at Harvard University who developed a 75-question survey that they would send out, and for $3 you would send your survey back in, filled out, all 75 questions. They would run it through a computer, and then the computer would determine who matched with who, and so you would receive back a letter with your matches. So very, very early concept of online dating.
Right.
And then shift that to the 90s where Match.com really became popularized. And so it shifted from, long surveys that you'd have to physically send in to using your own computer to sort through matches. However, the concept of these long questionnaires maintained. So in early iterations of online dating, so non-app dating, but online dating, they were very robust with surveys and questions so that people could, I believe, be more reflective around what it is they actually wanted from a person, and more reflective about, what it is that they themselves had to offer. And so 20 years later, since the Match.com boom, if you will, we've seen the introduction of dating apps, and it actually started with Grindr, and a few years later Tinder followed. And so what changed really is, it's about convenience with dating apps, and it's not very convenient to fill out question after question after question. It's much more convenient to fill out, these are 5 to 10 things that I really want in a partner. It'll take me 2 minutes to fill this out. I'll upload some photos, and we'll move from a model where we're matched based on values, based on personality, based on many different things that these questionnaires assess, to let's match based on photos and some algorithms that match people on very, in some ways, shallow factors.
We talk about, a generation that's been dubbed the loneliest generation. How does this all affect self-esteem?
It's interesting because self-esteem and self-worth are actually fundamentally different concepts.
Okay.
So when we think about self-esteem, it is mediated socially, which means you get feedback from other people, which affects how you view yourself, versus self-worth is really more of a concept of, I believe I'm worth something as a human being. And if I think to why I'm worth something, maybe I just feel that I'm intrinsically worth something. Or I look back at my accomplishments and I know I'm worth something. But the concept of self-esteem being socially mediated is a tricky one, because when you do look at, how connections are made, and they're made currently through dating apps in a way that's much more objectifiable. I imagine, and I don't have the data to reference here, but I imagine that it would have negative self-esteem. And the data that I do have shows that people who have low or moderate self-esteem compared to those who have high self-esteem actually engage in more quote-unquote problematic behavior when it comes to dating apps. And when I say problematic behavior, I don't mean anything outlandish. What I mean is they tend to swipe much more. They tend to feel much more anxious about the results on their app. So who they're chatting with, how they're chatting, is this going to be a connection or isn't it? So if self-esteem has an effect on how they use the apps, I believe that it's cyclical based on the concept of self-esteem itself.
I'm curious about the skill sets of younger generations. Do they have the skill sets? I think when we reference the pandemic, I think a lot of people talk about, we're talking about the younger kids who are going through school, like how difficult it's going to be for them. They've lost these really pivotal years. But just this generation of Gen Zs and millennials, do they have the skills to actually go on these dates and interact with people, make that eye contact that you were talking about?
So what the latest research does show is that Gen Zs themselves recognize that they feel, at least, that they lack some sort of social skill. And obviously this isn't everyone, but it is a sizable portion of respondents to these surveys. And so if they feel that they lack certain social skills, dating in real life is likely an uncomfortable experience. And we know this, in theory know this because of data that we have on the workplace and Gen Z entering a physical work environment after having completed their education or having had many of their formative working years in an online setting. So they feel uncomfortable coming back to work because they feel as though they lack those social skills. We also know that as the loneliest generation, they have less friends, so there's less practice when it comes to the actual and less chance of practicing because of the pandemic when it comes to actual conversations in person with people. Now, I think the nice thing and the hopeful thing is that if we reference Albert Bandura's, social learning theory, just by modeling behavior, by being exposed more, you'll tend to pick up more skills. So, all hope is not lost, certainly. But yes, there has been a shift.